This is a long-term game because what we want to do is get such massive oil reserves in Iran out of the hands of terrorists. And so what we're going to experience here in the short term is highly outweighed of the long-term benefit, because ultimately we're not going to have to worry about these issues in the Strait of Hormuz, because we're going to get all of the oil out of the hands of terrorists.
So let's bring you some more updates out of Iran, namely the fact that the Trump administration is now confirming today that we will indeed be taking and seizing the oil from the Iranian regime. And this is hilarious because it's triggered a lot of the worst people on the internet to proclaim total vindication of themselves. They're saying, see, I told you it was about the oil. It wasn't about democracy. This is more American imperialism to oppress the brown people in typical third world leftist cope. To which I have to say, yeah, we were telling you that from the beginning, weren't we? You know, I don't speak for other conservatives, but if you've been on the channel, you know from day one, we said 100%, it is about the oil, it is about the natural resources, and here's why those things matter. Because not only will the opening of the Iranian market actually drastically reduce our energy prices in the West long term, and that's a benefit for us, but really the security aspect of this is we are trying to cut off the oil supply for China. We are seeking to secure the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf from the threat of a potential powerful Chinese ally and nuclear-armed Iran going into the 21st century. And yes, what is the securing of those shipping lanes about? The transport of oil. That's what's being shipped out of the Persian Gulf. Everybody knows this. And so, yes, from the beginning, I have said this is about America securing its strategic interest in this part of the world, as we are obviously entering a 21st century arms race with the new rising empire that is China. And that's actually not a bad thing. That's actually a pragmatic foreign policy. That is, as a matter of fact, what Trump extensively criticized the neocons for many years now. Okay, a lot of people have this revisionist history of Trump where they just think he has always been a total national isolationist, this Ron Paul style character on foreign policy. That's not true. Actually, one of his big criticisms of the mishandling of the Iraq war was not just the nation building project, but secondly, the fact, I don't know if you remember him saying this throughout the years, we didn't get the oil. So here you have, I guess, a more honest and pragmatic foreign policy actually playing out where America is indeed saying, yes, we are here to secure our strategic interest. If you are an American, that is not a bad thing. By the way, Iran's oil is going to go somewhere. So would you rather it go to us, it go to a bunch of terrorists, or go to China, right? It's like, I think what you ultimately find is all these people at the end of the day are simply third worlders, anti-Westerners that are just rooting against our side of the world to succeed. And that's why they use all these like stupid terms like, oh, imperialism, international law, and all these stupid, dumb buzzwords that don't really mean anything, right? So anyways, let's get into all of this, guys. I'll also show you what Trump is recently saying about combat operations and a lot more. But again, main story today is going to be the future question of Iranian oil. Let's get into it though. First though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. We greatly appreciate the support. Also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, so here is the current statement by Trump about Iran, saying Iran, which is being beaten to hell, has now apologized and surrendered to its Middle East neighbors. So according now to the White House, as we covered, by the way, the not-so-smart Iranian regime thought it would be a good idea to antagonize all of the other Muslim countries. They started launching missiles at the Gulf states. They now even were trying to drag Turkey into the conflict. And according to them, are now claiming okay, we're so sorry for that. We realized that was a huge diplomatic mistake. It was not a good idea to drag half of that world into the war. So now they're allegedly promising it will not shoot at them anymore. Which is also interesting because most American military bases in the Middle East are stationed on countries like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, other places like that. So does that also mean they'll stop shooting at Americans? I don't know, open question, but yeah, it does seem to be a pretty significant defeat, you could say there. This promise was only made because of relentless U.S. and Israeli attack. They were looking to take over and rule the Middle East, which is a component of their ideology, by the way, the whole Shia revolution there. It is the first time time that Iran has ever lost in thousands of years to surrounding Middle Eastern countries. They have said, thank you, President Trump. I've said, you're welcome. Iran is no longer the bully of the Middle East. They are instead the loser of the Middle East and will be for many decades until they surrender or more likely completely collapse. And that's another important point I'd like to raise is, you'll have this quote unquote anti-imperialist crowd who, as I said, loves to just run cover for the third world and just, criticize the West for everything, who are currently trying to paint the Iranian regime as these innocent victims in the whole story. They're just victims of Western imperialism, as if they have not literally been funding war and terrorism throughout all of their regional neighbors, okay? Not just Israel. It's not just Iran is against Israel. No, they are also have spent many decades now trying to antagonize the other Sunni Muslim countries in the region who are just seeking to govern themselves. Oh, we want to topple you. Let's fund all these proxy groups. Let's fund all these terrorist militias. And then now, right? Now that like half the world is pissed at them, you see all these people trying to now run the cover that, Iran's never done anything, right? Iran is just acting in self-defense and nothing more. They definitely have not been poking the bear for a long time now, which, by the way, is the very reason that so many of the Gulf states so easily were willing, once Iran started hitting them, to go join into this conflict. It turns out that everyone in the region hates Iran. It's not just Israel. It's not just America. And that's a fact check that we ought to bring there. So that said, today, Iran will be hit very hard under serious consideration for complete destruction and certain death because of Iran's bad behavior are areas and groups of people that were not considered for targeting up until this moment in time. Thank you for your attention to this matter, which does seem to refer to maybe the third wave of people now in charge of the Iranian government. And here's what Trump had to say about combat operations.
Said I'd give it a 12 to a 15. Their army is gone. They're just about, their navy is gone. Their communications are gone. Their leaders are gone. 2 sets of their leaders are gone. They're down to their 3rd set. Their air force is wiped out entirely. Think of it. They have 32 ships. All 32 are at the bottom of the ocean. Other than that, they're doing very well, Coach. Very well. We're doing, our military is doing phenomenally. That's the big thing for this week. We seem to have a new thing every week, but the situation with a very bad and very sick group of leaders who were killing a lot of people. A lot of our people.
So yeah, there you have that on one hand. But let us now shift to the current announcement out of the Trump White House today that we will indeed be taking the oil, in their words, out of the hands of terrorists and into our own. Of course, we are currently watching a global energy crisis, you could say, because of the fact that Middle Eastern shipping lanes have been shut down. A lot of people are asking long term, well, what is the benefit of this going to be? Here is what the Trump administration had to say. Basically, much like Venezuela, and unlike the neocons, we are going to make sure we come home here with something of tangible and real economic benefit. Take a listen for yourself.
This is a long-term gain because what we want to do is get such massive oil reserves in Iran out of the hands of terrorists. And so what we're going to experience here in the short term is highly outweighed of the long-term benefit, because ultimately we're not going to have to worry about these issues in the Strait of Hormuz, because we're going to get all of the oil out of the hands of terrorists. And if you look at what has happened in Venezuela, the actions the president took in early January has unleashed Venezuela's potential. We were just down there this week. Chevron, huge producer, told us they're at record levels of production in Venezuela. That's just in 2 months. So we have seen more progress in 2 months in Venezuela than you've seen in the 20 years leading up to this point. That's just on the oil and gas. There are a lot of companies that had stuck it out under Maduro and are now hitting record levels of production. We brought down a bunch of other companies that want to invest, and they're only at a fraction of what they can be on the oil and gas sector. There is so many more fields, so much more potential. Delcy and her team also said they want to move at Trump speed. That was the language of the week. This has been a huge week for the U.S.-Venezuela's relations. We reestablished diplomatic relations with Venezuela. We talked to them about critical minerals and gold and coal. We're going to unleash all of that to the benefit of both Venezuela and the U.S.
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I'm not surprised by this at all, nor do I have really a problem with it. We told you from the beginning this is what it was about, but of course there's a whole crowd of characters out there saying, see, I told you, Trump is a neocon, this is just like the wars for the neocons. But again, we have to point out, no, it's actually fundamentally different because the neocons didn't go to war for the oil. That is one of the biggest lies of the 21st century that you're told. And nor has Trump magically flip-flopped on this issue because actually for many years now, he has been critical of the Bush and Obama administrations in Iraq for not taking the oil over there, which obviously is to the benefit of the United States. You know, it's just the reality that most wars in human history in some way or another were fought over control of natural resources, except the neocons, right? The neocons were the only ones dumb enough to basically win a war, at least in the beginning, right? Topple the government she needed toppled and said, yeah, we're not going to use that to the benefit of our own country. You know, all the sacrifice here was basically for nothing. And so just keep in mind, right? Trump has always been consistent on this issue. Yeah, he likes oil. He wants the oil. He wants to open up more flows of supply for cheaper energy and more abundant energy in the United States of America. You can call it imperialism. You can call it whatever you want. But this is simply, first of all, reality. And secondly, America itself, right? We are a global superpower. I've been saying this for the past couple of days. It is what it is.
Having the Arab League pay for the war, as an example.
Do you tax China on
by
imports?
going to Iraq and saying, you know what, you have $15 trillion worth of oil. We've spent $1.5 trillion on your war. Guess what, folks? You're going to be paying us back. And here's the problem. Here's the problem. When we leave Iraq, this is going to be one of the great disasters of all time. When we leave Iraq, Iran is sitting there waiting to take over their oil and the country, but they're more interested in the oil than the country. And Iran is going to take it over. Why don't we just take over the oil? We should take it over.
We should come in.
Well, I don't want to give it to Iran.
Should we be running Iraq right now?
We should be running the oil.
You brought up Iraq and something you said that could affect American troops in recent days. You said we should have kept the oil, but okay, maybe we'll have another chance. What did you mean by that?
Well, we should have kept the oil when we got out. And you know, it's very interesting. Had we taken the oil, you wouldn't have ISIS. Because they fuel themselves with the oil. That's where they got the money.
So you believe we can go in and take the oil?
We should have taken the oil. You wouldn't have ISIS if we took the oil.
Yeah, so for all the people who say, Trump has changed, he's betrayed us, well, there's him as far back as 2011 speaking the same exact way as he's currently moving right now. I think it's a great misnomer that Trump always campaigned as being this isolationist on foreign policy. No, he really fundamentally has advocated for a more practical, self-interested U.S. foreign policy, to which I say, what's wrong with being self-interested? Like, actually, yeah, a country should act in its own self-interest. What interest should they act in? Should they act in the interest of other countries? Is that a good foreign policy to have? Oh, well, I don't think so. I think actually that most other countries outside of the Western world are all playing to win themselves. Because yeah, when you're in a game, when you're in a competition, you want to win. And so Trump here is essentially saying the same thing. When is America gonna play to win, right? Don't see the issue there, right? If you're going to do all this stuff, yes, obviously at the end of it, you should take the oil. Yes, obviously the oil has been a huge problem for the Western world for many decades. You remember why, by the way, Jimmy Carter, under his administration, we had a big oil crisis in the 1970s? Yes, because a key market was cut off. It started entirely going to the east into what was at the time the Soviet world. It was not to our benefit. And obviously, Iran's done a lot of other bad things. But yes, at the end of the day, if you're going to go against Iran, you're going to try to take down Iran, it's pretty common sense that you want the oil markets of that country to now be reintegrated onto the Western side, right? But no, we shouldn't do that. We should just advocate for the third world or something. I don't know. But that said, of course, you can see clearly that a lot of people are not happy about this. You know, this guy right here is calling it pure evil. It's pure evil for the U.S. to seize the oil from Iran. F anyone who dares to say that this war is about helping the Iranian people. So, let's get this straight. I want to understand the third world is. So, when Iran basically acts as a puppet state and a colony of China, when they're sending 80% of their oil to China, you know, that's a good thing. Yay! They're fighting the West. They're anti-America. They're fighting against Israel. They're so stunning and brave. But when Iran now sends its oil to America, suddenly that's pure evil, right? It's like ultimately they're an oil subsidiary vassal state of someone, but you know, when they flip sides to our side, no, how dare that benefit us instead of benefit our top rival in the world? I don't even understand the logic. And again, we have said for the entire war now, right? Yes, the fact that Iran is a top oil supplier to China is kind of the nucleus of what this is all about. Yes, we are cutting off a key component of the Chinese oil supply, especially when it comes to the energy they would need to perpetuate an invasion of Taiwan. Yes, there's a bunch of geopolitical chess going on here, but I guess what so-called self-proclaimed Westerners are doing is they're mad that we're winning at the chess game as opposed to our top rival. You know, I think you start to see a lot of these people are just fundamentally anti-American. But okay, you know, there's my point on the China front. Yeah, so they were perfectly happy for Iran to be sending all their oil to China. But when we get their oil, now that's imperialism. You know, really funny how that works. But of course, secondly, I'd like to point out, even as it pertains to the Iranian people, okay, you know, I don't think it's exactly a secret that the Iranian regime is propped up by, right? Their entire economy comes from the sale of oil to parts around the world, right? They're an oil-based economy. Clearly, because they're these crazy jihadis, they can't really build much else of a functioning economy. And so, yeah, if you want to cripple the Iranian regime, you have to cripple their oil. That is first and foremost. You have to, you know, stop what's making them money. So I don't understand that point. But then even secondly, as we just pointed out in Venezuela, which these same characters are calling colonialism, imperialism, it's a simple fact of the matter, actually, that what we're doing in taking their oil, buying it as subsidized price, whatever you want to call it, is actually of great benefit to the Venezuelan people and to what was once a flailing economy. For two reasons. First and foremost, that has to do with the removal of Western sanctions. You know, these people are the same ones who say, oh, well, these third world dictatorships, they're not poor because they're third world dictatorships. They're poor because the evil American empire keeps sanctioning them. And then when we come in here and say, okay, well, our long-term goal is we want to be able to do business with people like Venezuela and people like Iran. We want to normalize diplomatic relations with a future government. Notice how the same cast of characters is also mad about that too. It's like, what do you want? Do you want us to be helping out the economies of these third world nations that you love or not? Because that's, by the way, what has happened in Venezuela, and they are benefiting from that.
I just spoke to the president of Venezuela and informed her that we're going to be opening up all commercial airspace over Venezuela. American citizens will be very shortly able to go to Venezuela, and they'll be safe there. They'll be safe. It's under very strong control. And the people of formerly of Venezuela, some want to go back and some want to go back to visit, and they're going to be able to do that. So I've instructed Sean Duffy and everybody else concerned, including the military, that if you would, by the end of today, I'd like you to have the airspace over Venezuela. Planes can go to Venezuela opened up. Okay?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
And by the way, I think the Trump energy secretary that we played previously made a fantastic point when he was talking about energy production in Venezuela and how the moment recently that American oil companies have now come into the country and they're once again handling the production and ultimately the sale of the oil, that oil production and the efficiency of that production has skyrocketed now to record highs and numbers that we have not seen in the past 20 years, basically overnight. And there's a very important reason for that, actually, that I hope all the third world leftist coalition here can truly grasp and understand is actually, as a matter of fact, the supposed anti-colonialists, the socialists, the jihadis are not really good at managing oil production, at running a functioning economy. That's why, by the way, their people are starving, okay? You know, for example, the history of Venezuela is what? So for a long time, American and British oil companies were basically managing all the production there. And Hugo Chavez, the socialist guy before Maduro, he got elected and said, this is not benefiting the Venezuelan people enough. We're anti-colonialists. We want to get the West out. So what did he do? He seized those assets from the American oil companies. He started nationalizing the production of oil, right? Very leftist, very socialist of him. And what happened? Actually, as a matter of fact, oil production in Venezuela utterly collapsed. Why is that? Because without the expertise and technology of American companies, it turns out the Venezuelans actually could not do it on their own. And by the way, the just pure inefficiency of having a socialist system try to produce oil versus a capitalist system, the whole thing collapsed, which again is the reason why the Venezuelan people began starving. Okay? So you can virtue signal all you want about, oh, the third worlders, the brown people, America's hurting them so much. No. Yeah. Are we acting in our self-interest? Yes. Are we arguably being imperialistic in a sense? Yes. But to sit there and pretend as if the alternative for the people of these countries is any better is just ridiculous. No, actually, as a matter of fact, now the Venezuelan people are doing better. Why? Because their oil production, their oil sales are way up. And because of that, the money's flowing back into their economy. They're doing much better. The same, folks, by the way, is true of Iran, right? Likewise, they have these ideological fanatics trying to run the whole thing themselves with a tight iron grip on power. They're not allowing liberalization, not really allowing global markets to come in. Yeah, if American oil companies started getting involved in Iran, likewise, you would see that boom overnight, and the economic crisis they're currently facing right now because of their own regime's mismanagement of their economy would also likewise evaporate overnight. And so, even if you want to virtue signal about what are we doing to the people, the Iranian people, the Venezuelan people, it's also just a simple fact that when we act in our self-interest, which is to do what? To do business, right? To make money. We also benefit the people of those countries as well because, we're not running a colony in a formal sense. Yes, we still are buying things from them, even if it's at a subsidized price. And ultimately, that money is flowing back into their economy. And guess what? These people finally are now able to get things like, food, water, shelter, so it's actually a win-win for both sides here. The only people who have a problem with it are, again, the people who believe in these dumb abstractions like international law, right? Anti-imperialism, anti-colonialism. It's just a bunch of crap. We're doing the right thing here. And, whatever the new Iranian government looks like, again, what it's been for me about this whole time, I never used the words, we need to install a democracy in Iran. I said we need to secure our strategic interests in Iran and stop having a hostile pro-China regime so close to the Strait of Hormuz in such a precarious position where they could shut down the entire 21st century supply chain in some type of future World War III style crisis. That's what it's all about, right? And so I see the signs here that we're doing that. Hopefully, we can get whatever the new government is sorted out quickly, but that's what it's always been about for me, right? So, and by the way, I think the same thing is true for Trump. Now, he's encouraged the Iranian people to, hey, rise up, take over. He's definitely open to working with a totally new regime, but if we have to pursue the Maduro option, I think the White House also sees that as more practical. I'm fine with either, right? Because, and yeah, I'm rooting for the Iranians to fully, fix the whole country and topple the regime as a whole. Sure. But as it pertains to American foreign policy, as I've been saying, that's not our job. Our job's not to decide specifically what type of government or what ruling party is in charge. Our job is to make sure our strategic interests in that country are being secured, whatever the new government looks like. And you're seeing the evidence of that. And it's a good thing, right? But of course, if this all works out and 6-7 months from now, you see a way cheaper gas and way more money flowing into America, way more money flowing into Iran, China handicapped and checkmated in the 21st century. What are you going to sit around and, it was imperialism. Okay, if that's the case, then imperialism, it turns out, would have worked out pretty well for us as it's working out right now in Venezuela. I don't know what you want me to say. But all right, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.